I drove through 9 straight hours of the worst snowstorm I had ever seen, determined to make it home for her birthday. My fingers ached from gripping the steering wheel so tightly. The expensive cake sat beside me on the passenger seat, along with a small jewelry box containing the diamond earrings she had been eyeing for months. 7 years of marriage had its ups and downs lately, but surprising, Sarah always brought back that spark we shared when we first met. What I never expected was to hear those words as I quietly entered our home. If you are watching this now, drop a comment letting me know where you are viewing from, and hit that like and subscribe button as I tell you how my entire life changed in a single moment. Our story began at a small coffee shop just off campus. I was studying engineering, buried in textbooks and stress, when Sarah walked in and ordered a caramel latte. She had this laugh that could fill a room, bright blue eyes that crinkled at the corners when she smiled. We married young just after graduation, despite warnings from our parents about rushing in. Those first few years were magical, as we settled into our tiny apartment, both working entry-level jobs, dreaming about our future together. I landed a position at a civil engineering firm that required occasional travel to project sites. Sarah excelled in marketing, quickly climbing the corporate ladder at her company. We moved from our cramped apartment to a comfortable suburban home, replacing ramen dinners with weekend brunches and actual furniture instead of milk crates. Financial struggles gave way to stability, and we seemed to be living the dream we had sketched out in that coffee shop years ago. Things started changing subtly about a year ago. Sarah became increasingly distant, canceling our regular date nights for work events or outings with her new friends. Her sister Lauren moved to town, and they became inseparable, spending weekends together, shopping, or at wine tastings I was rarely invited to join. Lauren never particularly liked me, always hinting that her sister could have done better. I tried rekindling our connection through small gestures, surprise lunches at her office, text messages throughout the day, planning weekend getaways that often got postponed due to her suddenly busy schedule. Each rejection chipped away at my confidence, but I doubled down on my efforts, convinced that if I just tried harder, we could recapture what we once had. When my boss told me about an urgent project requiring my presence in Chicago for several days, I immediately realized it would overlap with her 35th birthday. I negotiated fiercely to ensure I could wrap up the essential work by noon on her birthday, giving me just enough time to make the 9-hour drive home if everything went perfectly. My colleagues thought I was crazy to attempt such a journey in February with storm warnings across 3 states, but Sarah was worth the risk. At least, that was what I believed. The weather forecast had severely underestimated the storm. What should have been light snowfall turned into near blizzard conditions 2 hours into my drive. Visibility dropped to mere feet in front of my headlights, and the highway transformed into a treacherous obstacle course of stranded vehicles and icy patches. My phone kept buzzing with weather alerts and concerned messages from colleagues urging me to find a hotel and continue the next day. I called Sarah twice during brief stops. She sounded distracted both times, mentioning plans with Lauren for dinner, but nothing about missing me or wishing I was there for her birthday. I told myself she was playing it cool, not wanting to make me feel guilty for being away. That thought kept me going through 3 different detours where state troopers had closed primary routes due to accidents. At a gas station in Pennsylvania, I nearly gave up. My back ached from tension, and exhaustion clouded my judgment. The attendant warned me that conditions were worsening ahead. Standing in that fluorescent-lit convenience store, I called Tyler, my best friend since high school. "Just find a motel, man," he advised, after hearing the stress in my voice. "She will understand. It is not worth risking your life." But something drove me forward. Perhaps it was stubborn pride, or the diamond earrings in my pocket that had cost 3 months of careful saving. Maybe it was the growing fear that something was slipping away in our marriage that I could not quite name. Whatever the reason, I bought the strongest coffee. They had picked up the custom cake I had ordered from a local bakery before leaving Chicago and continued into the storm. The last 2 hours were the worst. My windshield wipers barely kept up with the heavy snow, and twice my car fishtailed dangerously on black ice. I white-knuckled it through rural backroads when a jackknife semi closed the interstate. Every mile felt like a personal victory against nature and exhaustion. When I finally turned onto our street at 11:15 p.m., the neighborhood was dark and silent under a thick blanket of snow. No other tire tracks marred our driveway, which meant Sarah was home. Light glowed from our kitchen windows. I parked on the street to preserve the surprise, carefully balancing the cake box while retrieving the gift bag from the glove compartment. The garage door would make too much noise, so I used my key in the back entrance that led through our sunroom into the kitchen. I had made it. Against all odds and good advice, I had made it home for her birthday with just 45 minutes to spare. I heard their voices before I fully opened the door. Sarah and Lauren sat at our kitchen island, wine glasses in hand, laughter punctuating their conversation. I paused, cake in hand, ready to surprise my wife with my dramatic entrance. "God, I cannot believe he is actually trying to drive back in this weather," Sarah said, her voice carrying clearly in our open-concept kitchen. It is so typical, this grand gesture that nobody asked for instead of just being consistently present. "At least if he crashes, you could use the insurance money for that trip to Italy we talked about," Lauren replied with a snicker. Silver linings. My blood turned colder than the storm outside. Surely I had misheard. The exhaustion was playing tricks on my mind. Then Sarah laughed, that same beautiful laugh that had captivated me in the coffee shop years ago. "God, I hope he crashes. I could use the insurance money. This house needs renovations he keeps putting off for his precious career. Or at least a few months of silence while he recovers," Lauren added. Remember how peaceful it was when he had that work trip to Seattle for 3 weeks. They dissolved into laughter again, clinking glasses in a toast. I stood frozen, the cake suddenly heavy in my hands, the gift bag dangling from numb fingers. "James would never pull this kind of stunt," Sarah continued, referencing a coworker she had mentioned increasingly often lately. "He understands work-life balance. Colby just thinks throwing money at things makes up for not being emotionally available." Speaking of James, Lauren said with a knowing tone, "Any developments there worth sharing with your favorite sister?" Sarah sighed. "He is just so different from Colby. Attentive, present. We had lunch yesterday, and he remembered exactly how I take my coffee from one casual mention weeks ago. Colby still gets it wrong half the time after 7 years. They continued dissecting my failures as a husband while I stood silently in the shadows. Each word cut deeper than the last, confirming suspicions I had buried beneath denial and optimism. The storm I had just driven through suddenly seemed like a perfect metaphor for our marriage, a blind, dangerous journey towards something that no longer existed. With surgical care, I set the cake box on the counter where they would find it, placing the gift bag beside it. The receipt for the earrings was still tucked inside, showing the price I had paid for her affection. Without saying a word, I backed out the way I had come, not bothering to close the door properly behind me. Neither of them noticed. They were too busy laughing about another of my apparent shortcomings. I spent that night in a hotel 10 miles away, staring at the ceiling while snow continued falling outside my window. The words replayed in my mind like a cruel recording. "God, I hope he crashes. The insurance money." A few months of silence. They laughed. Sleep came in fitful bursts, interrupted by vivid dreams where I kept driving into deeper snow until my car disappeared completely. By morning, I had moved beyond shock into a strange, calm clarity. When the hotel room phone rang with my wake-up call, I made the decision that would change everything. I checked my phone to find 3 missed calls from Sarah, followed by increasingly irritated text messages. "Where are you? Did you leave a cake here last night, Colby? This is weird. Call me back. I have been trying to reach you all morning. If this is some kind of game, it is not funny." I texted back a single sentence. "I heard everything you said to Lauren last night. Her response came quickly. "I do not know what you think you heard, but you are overreacting as usual." As usual. The dismissal of my feelings was so familiar, it almost made me doubt myself. Almost. Tyler met me for breakfast at a diner near the hotel. His face grew increasingly grim as I recounted what had happened. Unlike Sarah, he did not attempt to dismiss or minimize my experience. "I always thought Lauren was toxic, but Sarah—" He shook his head. "Man, that is beyond salvageable. What are you going to do?" "I already called a lawyer this morning," I replied, surprising even myself with my decisiveness. "I am meeting with him later today." Tyler nodded, then asked the question I had been avoiding all night. "Do you think something is going on with this James guy?" I pulled out my phone and showed him the text thread I had discovered after searching Sarah's name and James in my phone bill records. Nothing explicitly romantic, but the familiar tone inside jokes and late-night timestamps painted a clear picture of emotional intimacy that had once been reserved for me. "Even if it is not physical yet, that is where it is heading," Tyler said gently. "I am sorry, man." We spent the next hour strategizing practical matters. Tyler offered his guest room for as long as I needed. We discussed finances, legal considerations, and the logistics of separation. For the first time, I admitted how much of myself I had surrendered, trying to make Sarah happy, working longer hours to afford the lifestyle she wanted while she complained about my absence. 3 days passed before I returned to the house. Sarah was waiting, her initial anger having morphed into a calculated charm I now recognized as manipulation. The cake container sat in the trash bin, the gift bag nowhere to be seen. "There you are," she said, as if I had simply been late for dinner, rather than absent for days after hearing my wife wish for my death. "We need to talk about your little disappearing act." "We do need to talk," I agreed, maintaining a calm I did not know I possessed. "About why my wife would tell her sister she hopes I crash my car for the insurance money." Her face flickered between expressions settling on indignation. "You were spying on me. In my own home, I drove 9 hours through a blizzard to surprise you for your birthday." "I was not spying. I was bringing you a cake and those diamond earrings you kept hinting about." "You completely misunderstood," she insisted, switching tactics. "Lauren and I were just joking around." "That is how we talk. It does not mean anything." I placed a folder on the kitchen counter. "I found these while looking for our insurance paperwork. Care to explain the $20,000 in credit card debt you have been hiding?" The color drained from her face. The secret accounts I had discovered explained her growing resentment and fixation on my life insurance policy. She had been spending beyond our means for years, hiding the evidence and blaming me for financial restrictions that were necessary to keep us afloat. "It is not what it looks like," she stammered. "It rarely is," I replied. "Just like your relationship with James is not what it looks like, right?" Her eyes narrowed. "Have you been checking my phone? That is invasion of privacy. The phone I pay for. On the family plan with detailed billing I have access to, where you text him 50 times more often than you text your husband. That phone." Our confrontation was interrupted by Lauren using her key to enter unannounced, a habit I had long resented. She froze upon seeing me, quickly composing her features into a mask of concern. "Colby, we were so worried about you," she lied smoothly. "Sarah has been beside herself." "I bet she has," I replied coolly. "Did she tell you I overheard your little birthday conversation about hoping I crash for the insurance money or enjoying a few months of silence while I recover?" Lauren paled, but recovered quickly. "You are taking things completely out of context. We were just blowing off steam." "The context is quite clear," I said, turning back to Sarah. 7 years of marriage, and that is how you talk about me when you think I cannot hear." The doorbell rang. Sarah and Lauren exchanged panicked glances that confirmed my suspicion before I even opened the door. James stood on our porch, holding a bottle of wine and wearing a sheepish expression that transformed to shock upon seeing me. "Oh," he said inadequately. "I thought that I would not be home." I finished for him. Clearly, "Please leave my property." To his credit, he left immediately. I closed the door and turned back to the two women who had betrayed me in different but equally painful ways. "I will be staying elsewhere while the divorce proceedings begin." I stated the word divorce hanging in the air like a thunderclap. "My lawyer will contact yours. I suggest you start figuring out how to manage that secret debt on your own." Divorced Sarah looked genuinely shocked, as if consequences were something that happened to other people. "You cannot be serious." Over a stupid comment and some texts, the comment revealed your character. The text confirmed it. The hidden debt explained your motive. There is nothing left to discuss. Lauren stepped forward, all pretense abandoned. "You are being ridiculous. Everyone vents about their spouse. It does not mean anything." I turned to her with calm dignity. "Please leave my house. This is between Sarah and me." "It is my house too," Sarah protested. "The house with the mortgage in my name, that you have been secretly hoping I would die to pay off. That house before either could respond. Neighborhood security knocked on our door responding to a noise complaint from our typically quiet color, Disac. I explained we were having a private family discussion that was concluding, and they respectfully departed with a warning about keeping the peace. I went upstairs and packed essentials while Sarah made frantic phone calls in the kitchen. I could hear her spinning the story, casting herself as the victim of my unreasonable behavior. From our bedroom closet, I retrieved important documents I had already identified with my lawyer's guidance. Before leaving, I transferred half of our joint account funds to a new account in my name, leaving the legally advised amount to cover household expenses until formal proceedings began. I placed my wedding ring on the nightstand alongside a letter expressing not anger but profound disappointment and grief for what might have been. Sarah tried one last manipulation as I headed for the door. "If you leave now, do not expect to come back," she threatened, tears finally appearing now that all other tactics had failed. "I never planned to," I replied softly, and walked out into the bright winter sunshine, the storm having finally passed. The 3 weeks that followed were a period of profound transformation. I moved into Tyler's guest room temporarily while securing a small rental property closer to my office. The initial shock gave way to waves of grief, anger, and eventually a strange sense of liberation. I reconnected with friends I had gradually lost touch with during my marriage, discovering that Sarah had subtly discouraged many of those relationships. My sister Julia flew in for a weekend, bringing home cooked meals and the unfiltered perspective that only siblings can provide. "She never deserved you," Julia stated plainly, while helping arrange furniture in my new place. "I tried to tell you years ago, but you were too in love to see it." I started therapy, working through the patterns that had led me to accept increasingly poor treatment while continuously upping my efforts to earn love that should have been freely given. My therapist helped me recognize how my workaholic tendencies had been both a cause and effect of our deteriorating relationship, a cycle I was determined to break. At work, I established healthier boundaries, declining non-essential travel and leaving at reasonable hours. I joined a gym, started cooking proper meals instead of grabbing fast food between meetings, and slept better than I had in years, despite the circumstances. Meanwhile, news of Sarah's growing regret reached me through our dwindling circle of mutual friends. Her carefully constructed narrative of being the wronged party crumbled when Lauren, facing financial problems of her own, moved back to Ohio and stopped supporting her version of events. James, it turned out, had been cultivating Sarah's affections largely because of her position at work and the career advancement she could facilitate. When the office rumor mill exposed their inappropriate relationship and Sarah received a formal warning from HR, he quickly distanced himself. The financial reality hit Sarah hardest. Without my income covering the majority of our expenses, The minimum payments on her secret credit cards consumed most of her salary. The renovation projects she had planned with my hypothetical life insurance money remained undone, and the Italian vacation with Lauren evaporated. 2 weeks into our separation, the messages started, first through friends, then directly to my phone. "I miss you. Can we just talk? I never meant any of those things. It was just stupid venting. Please give me another chance to make things right." I maintained polite but firm boundaries, responding only to messages pertaining to the divorce proceedings. My lawyer advised against any meetings without her, representing me, wisdom I heeded despite Sarah's increasing pleas. Then came the night that tested my resolve. I was having dinner alone at Giovanni's, the Italian restaurant, where we had our first real date. I had not chosen it for sentimental reasons, but because it was close to my new apartment, and I craved their homemade pasta. Halfway through my meal, Sarah walked in alone and spotted me immediately. For a moment, I saw the woman I had fallen in love with, vulnerable and genuine in a way she rarely allowed herself to be. She approached my table hesitantly, all calculation absent from her expression. "May I sit for just a minute?" she asked quietly. Against my better judgment, I nodded. "I have been doing a lot of thinking," she began, twisting her napkin nervously. "What you heard that night, what I said, it was unforgivable. I know that now." I remained silent, letting her continue. "I took you for granted for so long," she admitted, tears forming in her eyes. I compared our life to Instagram posts and Facebook updates from college friends, always wanting more without appreciating what we had. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked finally. "Because I am so sorry, Colby. I would do anything to take back those words. And the hurt I caused you," a tear slipped down her cheek. "I lost sight of the man who would drive through a blizzard just to be with me on my birthday. No one else would ever do that." I looked at her for a long moment, seeing both the woman I had loved and the one who had wished me harm in the same face. With surprising clarity, I realized I could forgive her without returning to her. "I forgive you, Sarah," I said softly, meaning it. "Not for your sake, but for mine. I cannot carry that anger anymore." Hope flickered in her eyes. "Does that mean—" "No," I said gently but firmly. "Forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. Some things cannot be undone." I reached into my pocket and placed a small object on the table between us. It was the keychain she had given me when we first started dating, a silly tourist trinket from her hometown. "I want you to have this," I told her. "A reminder of who we were before things went wrong. That was real, and it mattered even if this is where our story ends." She stared at the keychain, fresh tears falling. "I really did love you." "I know," I replied. "Just not enough to wish me well, instead of wishing me harm." I paid my bill and left her sitting there, walking out into the cool evening air, feeling lighter than I had in months. The divorce was finalized 3 months later with a settlement that was fair to both parties. Sarah eventually sent me a letter, acknowledging her role in our breakdown and wishing me happiness, a gesture that helped close that chapter of my life with something approaching peace. I accepted a promotion that relocated me to Denver, a fresh start in a city where the mountains reminded me daily of my resilience. I developed new friendships based on mutual respect and authenticity, qualities I now recognized as non-negotiable in all my relationships. 1 year after that snowstorm changed the trajectory of my life, I stood on a mountain overlook, reflecting on the journey. The birthday that had begun with such hope and ended in such pain had ultimately led me to a truer understanding of myself and what I deserved from life. The greatest lesson I learned was that self-respect is not selfishness. Boundaries are not barriers to love, but prerequisites for its authentic expression. Walking away from someone who does not value your well-being is not giving up, it is growing up. Today, my life looks nothing like I imagined it would during those 9 treacherous hours on the road, determined to reach someone who wished me harm. And for that unexpected blessing, I am profoundly grateful. Have you ever discovered something painful that ultimately led to positive change in your life? Share your experience in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to hear more authentic life experiences, and remember that your like and share helps others find these stories of resilience and growth. Thank you for listening to my journey, and may you find the strength to choose yourself when faced with situations that diminish your worth.